It looks like we have Nancy Smith joining via Zoom. Or via Teams, I should say. It's Teams, yes.
Yeah.
Okay then, so the first item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes of December 8th. Mr. Morris sent those to everyone via email recently. It looks like there may be some hard copies as well if people need them. Are there? Well, I would welcome a motion to consider the minutes and then we can go into discussion if necessary.
Make a motion to consider the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes?
I did not have any changes.
Edits? I looked through them, they seem fine to me. Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes. No discussion, so the minutes are being considered as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none. Consider the minutes approved unanimously. First item of business on the agenda today is a history of the Johnston Drive property. And Mr. Morris, I will yield the floor to you.
We can probably, if you're okay with it, combine the first two. I'll give a little bit of a kind of almost a synopsis of what I did last time as kind of the history. And then we can move into my presentation, which starts, I guess, a little bit of that history.
Oh, we have a question.
I think it's probably also prudent to talk about that you only take public comments during the public comment section, but he may have trouble hearing.
Mr. Beaufet, you're muted.
Okay, this is a point of order, basically. I believe for remote meetings, including remote members of the committee, that you have to do unfortunately a
Roll call vote for everyone.
roll call vote. Yes.
So let's go back and clarify the approval of the minutes. Chair will call the roll. Mr. Marker.
Yes.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Lynch.
Yes.
Ms. Eckert.
Yes.
Mr. Rich.
Yes.
Chair votes aye. Ms. Smith.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. We will consider the minutes approved unanimously by roll call. Thank you, Mr. Beaufet, for that point of order. So, Mr. Morris, you are proposing that the first two bullet points here under the business item of the agenda essentially would be covered together.
Yeah, I don't have much more to offer on the history. I'll just expand on what I did on the PowerPoint a little bit and speed things up. Let me see if I can. Okay, so before I move to I'll go ahead and move to it. This is Johnston Beach. Hopefully you guys are not Johnston Park. I presented it as Park Beach when I did in September. Kind of gets called both, but, so this is it. Hopefully you guys were able to make it down there before the weather got in too much, but we'll go over it pretty well tonight so you really understand the property, hopefully. So in the history of this, going back a little bit before 2000, this was railroad property where the railroad came through. They owned some property on both sides of this. As I told you guys last meeting, they had entered into these leases with some of the cabins that were down there for people to go ahead and put up some small cabins and lease them and have some lake property that was railroad property. Sometime, I believe it was late 80s, 90s, the railroad went defunct and the state took over. By state law. The state had first right to take that land when the railroad went out. So they did that all over the state. I was involved when I was in Claremont and some pretty big legal reviews on the railroad going through there and how they went about, taking the land, and they actually even took some private landowners' land in that swap. So it was very interesting reading. But anyway, the state ended up with this land, and it was around the 2000 time frame. I actually had some minutes I tried to find for you guys today that I'll continue trying to find when the select board was talking about this, but it was offered to the town around the 2000 time frame. And, so the select board talked about it. The minutes that I tried to find where they actually approved taking this, they talked about making this a public beach. So I think that's a pretty big point, and I will find you those minutes that they talked about that. But be it here nor there, we're to this point now trying to decide what it is. That doesn't mean because that's what they thought it should be, that's what we think it should be. By September of 2000, this property was added to the 2000 to 2006 CIP plan to be utilized as a town beach. At the 2001 town meeting, Article 11 asked for authorization to select this and other state-owned properties. There were some other properties along the rail trail up at the same time. The article was amended to include any former Northern Railroad properties and give permission to the select board until rescinded to accept that property. So they wouldn't have to come back for each parcel. They could accept any and all property. And then in April of 2001, the land at the end of Johnston Drive was given to the town with the stipulation that the lifetime leases for maps lot 14, 3-2, 3B, and 5 were honored. And like we talked last meeting, they were supposed to be honored until either given up or the current owners of that were deceased. They were not allowed to pass it on. They were not allowed to sell it. But they were allowed to keep their lease. So this is really the area we're talking about right now. There is a small, oh, you can't see my mouse, on the other side of the little stream where I kind of drew a little property line there. We do own another piece of land, but the camp is still being leased there. So for the terms of this committee, we're not talking about anything past that little creek. And actually that's maybe even a little bit this side of that creek. So we're really just talking about this 1.5 acre swap right here. And not that we couldn't come out to the point, but really where the bushes turn right there is where we probably end. I don't foresee us.
So can you show me with your mouse, which would the last remaining one?
Show you my mouse won't show up on
Yeah,
that, but
yeah.
It's like right in here. There's a
Okay.
little cabin area. So we're not crossing the creek at
Yep,
all. We're not
yep.
really talking about those properties at all. And there's actually a little beach access here that a few of these neighbors use, and you guys will make the final decision, or we will. You can sit at the table. But with the heavy wooded part right in here, I really wasn't talking about that area much either, once we were doing something with that. So I was just highlighting that it's a beautiful location. I took this pictures from a few different areas. The one on the top right and left are, of course, this side of the A-frame, looking at that portion of it. And then the middle picture's the other portion. And you'll see as we pan out a little bit, it's with the split rail fence and some bushes there, it's almost divided into two little areas. And we'll talk about that. And it is a nice little stop along the rail trail. I was comparing to Shakoma Beach, but like I said last meeting, we need to divide these two, but it does provide really nice accessibility if you're talking about handicap access. It wouldn't be fully ADA compliant because you're going across grass, but it's a really flat lot. And if you were to help someone with some mobility issues, I think it'd be fairly easy to get them across this lot. I'm gonna skip that. I wanted to show this picture. There's a little glare from where I sit, but you can kind of see the sand shelf that comes out there. It goes 30, 50 feet out somewhere in that range. And you can see from quite a ways from the shore. I haven't went there and went out in the water, but I know a few people that have taken their kids there and they can wade out quite a ways and play.
Is there a reason you call it a sand shelf? Because it's really alluvial plain. It's pebbles and rocks and rounded,
Yeah,
smooth
I
rocks.
say that because right along the shoreline is sand.
Is sand, okay, but as you go,
It's a shelf.
it's a shelf, but it's also quite shallow for a ways out,
Yeah.
so it's like 30 yards out.
Yeah.
It's still quite shallow, and boats, which usually often hug the shore, need to move away from it, so.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point that I was making here when I was presenting to the select board, that I thought it was a great place to make as a park or a beach, because it gives that shelf where kids could go play and that type of
It's very similar to Beaver Point or the end of the lake where
Yeah.
the people have so many folks come and throw out an anchor and park.
So this is what I was proposing, was to make a little area in here where we could fit 15 to 18 parking spaces. This was just a little thought that if I've had a few people approach me about bringing a lot of out-of-town people to this, that, you know, there's the possibility that you could charge for out-of-town residents to park in that parking lot and keep it free for local, but that really depends on the funding source. You know, if you accept federal grant funds, something like that, that all goes away. Me and Kevin had went out there and looked, and the way that this is divided into two, this little section right there could be an area that you could divide up for possible rental to bring some revenue back into maintaining the park or park system, either way.
What condition is that structure in?
It's in pretty decent shape. I don't know that you'd really want it to be usable for the public or
Yeah.
something, but it could be up until the year before we got control of this, which was last April.
Yeah.
So I believe the summer before, some people had rented it from the lady that owned it and stayed there for a little while. So
What sort of sewage system is
it
it?
has a septic tank,
Septic tank?
and I'm pretty
Recent?
sure it's probably old.
Needs to be tested.
Or gotten rid of.
Yeah, often 55-gallon drum with.
That was my original plan, and we didn't get too deep into that in the select board one, but my original plan was to remove that structure and maybe use that area to build a little covered gazebo or something like that in the future or right now. So I know DPW said if we did remove that, they'd like to keep the electric supply there, so we have that readily available.
Did you have like an agenda or a packet that you handed out or anything like that?
Yeah, agendas are over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the only other thing I had was minutes,
Oh, okay.
and everything else was sent out.
Perfect. Thank you.
So with what I was thinking about, and there was a little bit, I'll just go through this. We got a quote for demolition of the structures on site. We may even be able to get it done a little less than this, but we were looking at about $15,000 to tear those structures down. The little parking area, if we gravelled it all in, and I just went forward, but if we gravelled that whole section in and didn't leave it natural, it'd be about $13,000. There was talk in the paper about road upgrades that got a little blown out of proportion, but what we were thinking was just grading that rough road that's there now, putting a little bit of gravel on it, no expansion, I've got called about paving it. No, we're not paving it.
Is it a private road?
It is a private road. Putting $8,000 of contingency, the total cost would be about $50,000. Of that, if you break it down, $35,000 would be materials and contractors, and 15,000 of that would be town labor. So
Once you upgrade the road, even the minimal that you're talking about, does it then become a town road?
no, I don't believe so. And there's some of that we'd have to look into, but we're a private landowner down there as well.
Yeah.
So we'd have to be a little careful in how we did that, but
Ed,
With
are
the-
there any rights of ways for the adjacent landowners?
there are. In the deed, and if you go out towards the point, you can see the kayaks.
Yeah.
Laying out there about in that area. On the deed, it shows a 30, I think it's 35 foot, 30 or 35 foot right of way. That goes up and then it kind of crosses across the top where we were looking at putting that parking area that goes to the road. And the right of way is really just that, it's giving them access to the lake. It's
Giving
not
who?
the landowners behind this, Barbara Jones and the landowners along
George.
Johnston Road.
George Butler?
So it just gives them an area. Really, we need to keep an area clear that they can walk through to get down to that,
Huh.
the lake. So, we can, I mean, depending on what the group decides to do, when we get closer to being final, that's when I was gonna get the attorneys involved and do the final research to make sure that it was right. I don't think we wanna go spend a lot of money right now until we know what we're gonna do.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
But, you know, it is listed as a right of way, which is truly just that, an area where you can cross the land to keep it open. And if we were going to make this into a public park or beach, that whole area would be open and
Yeah.
accessible by them and anybody else.
If the conclusion of this committee were to recommend selling, the right of ways would have to stay.
They would stay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Does the property have any formal designation right now? Is it a town park officially? I know that the first slide called it a park and
It's not
we
really,
kind of, we've been referring to it a little bit as a park. Is it officially one of the recreation
It's not-
defined assets?
it's not designated as a park or a beach or anything. It is town-owned property.
It's just vacant town
Open
property. yeah.
town-owned property right now. Yeah. This presentation, I didn't change it at all. I
Mhm.
wanted you guys to
Yep,
see it as presented, and I was presenting it to be a park or a beach for the town.
Did you do any research into what would be required from an insurance, or do we self-insure? And maintenance, if in fact it turned into a town park or beach? And in a beach, does that mean we have to have lifeguards out there?
We would not have to have lifeguards out there. It might be a good idea too, if we're having swimming, but you know, Shakoma Beach the last couple of years has not had lifeguards out there. It can be a swim at your own risk park. It would be insured, and it is now through Primex, our insurer. And there would be no upgraded costs or anything like that. And as of last summer, when we took over the whole area, our DPW has been mowing and maintaining the park.
So there is, what level of town maintenance has occurred on the property? Just mowing?
For the most
Yep.
part, last year was just mowing. Before that, one of the Barbaras, I think it was Barbara Jones,
Jones.
was actually paying someone to mow down there.
Does the town clear any snow on the private road?
No,
No. So the right of way is seasonal and, I mean,
well,
it's
the
snow
right of
covered
way is
during,
there.
it's there, but
Yeah.
it's not, you know, the snow is not being cleared from the area to provide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, what I had told them, and I would have to verify this a little more, that if we did turn this into a park or beach, that we would be one of the landowners as part of that private road, which you would think we would just buy in to do it, but if we were bringing people down there, I think it's only right that we would do the summer maintenance to keep that drivable if we're bringing more traffic than the normal homeowners would be down there. But we would have no plans of plowing it and keeping it open in the winter for,
Do, snowmobiles use it at all during the winter?
the rail trail's open, so
Yeah,
they
okay.
obviously could.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a access point for them to get on that side of the lake.
Are there any plans for, like a porta potty or some type of septic,
We didn't,
facility?
we didn't get that far.
Okay,
All I gave was a very preliminary presentation to see if the select board was even interested in researching this.
mhm.
And from that discussion came this committee to say, let's figure out what we want to do with this.
Cause it would seem that would be
You would
necessary.
need something.
Yeah.
I think we had some talks as staff that we would need to put something down there, but like that. I mean, there was a lot of talk in public that this wasn't researched and that wasn't researched, and we didn't want to spend a lot of time doing a lot of research if it was, no, let's sell the property.
Has there been an appraisal done of the property?
There has not been.
Okay.
About all we've done, I did talk with a realtor informally, not as the town of Enfield. I think maybe I didn't go all the way to the end. I put a slide in there. Here's other
Oh, there it
options.
is.
Bottom,
So, if you were to keep the property with no improvements, there was a lot of talk about just conserve the land and leave it alone. I think we would still need to remove those structures for safety reasons.
Yeah.
So you're still looking at that $15,000 cost. You'd still have some maintenance insurance on the property, and you'd have to maintain insurance and maintain access for emergency vehicles. So probably still need to do part of that road upgrade to be able to get ambulances or fire trucks down there. If you kept it, there'd be no tax value or revenue. If you sold it, there would be.
Right.
And then the addition of a conservation and easement, I think would really not do much because it's still open public land, but it would just restrict residential or commercial development of the land in the future. And then if you sell the property, and this is my opinion, that it would probably be worth somewhere in that $1 million range. Since this has happened, on the other side in the Chosen Vale area, we had a vacant 1.6 acre lot sell against the lake for about $1.5 million. So,
Did you have other slides in between?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, in between? Yeah. Let me just go back so we hit them all. Oh, this was just possible ways of funding it. If they wanted to, you could fund it through the budget or fund balance or CIP. You could go into a partnership and share the costs with other organizations. You could do grant funding. You could do private donors like we did in Mascoma Lakeside Park, or a multiple of those sources. Skipping around a little bit, this is the last slide, and I just wanted to point out some of the places in the master plan that talked about, adding outdoor recreation resources was a big part of this plan. So I'll leave that up so you can read them, and I want to read them all to you. If you can't read them, I will.
Has the master plan been officially adopted?
Not quite yet, has it?
It's been adopted by the planning board,
Okay,
so yes.
yes. So it just got,
Just barely.
was that last night?
Nope, the meeting before.
the meeting before.
Has anyone looked at the difficult access to Johnson Drive? I mean, it's just a miserable place to turn in because I used to do it all the time.
Yeah, now you better have a four-wheel drive vehicle going down there and it better have a lot of clearance right at the moment.
I mean, just getting off of Route 4. It's a
Oh, yeah.
nasty turn.
It is,
It's-
it is. You're right. It is. It's
It's
difficult
nasty.
getting off quickly. And
It's
even
difficult to
worse,
come
trying to
out.
get back on Route 4. Coming out of there.
Anymore.
The second paragraph is actually, fairly strong language as far as master plan goes. The town owns several waterfront properties. Rail trail provides direct public access to about 1 mile of shoreline. These resources, presumably referring to the several waterfront properties, these resources should be leveraged to provide public recreation access and amenities that support tourism-based economic development, contribute to the quality of life for town residents. That essentially is outlining a vision where properties like this are retained for recreation access and amenities.
Yeah, and that's accurate, but I think also along with that is we need to somehow self-fund these properties so that they can move forward and there can be maintenance and improvement. What we don't want to do is just have it sit there and the thing that we talked about a lot in the meetings was leveraging what we have. So it's important that we figure that out.
I think maybe for some people, they might define quality of life. Some people might define quality of life like leaving land untouched. So I just want to be mindful of that too.
Proposed additional apartments above Maple Street coming up. That end of town is going to need more recreational facilities, and it's good access to this site.
I think you can look at that. I think we also need to remember with that the site of apartments has been proposed 3 times before. Until we have even an application in front of us. But yes, I mean, we should look at diversifying our recreation assets and where we put them around town so we can.
Doesn't part of the master plan talk about encouraging people to use the rail trail and get out and walk and get away from some of the car dependent aspects of everything we do?
Yeah, there's a lot in the master plan about creating ways for people to travel and not use their car, in particular sidewalks connecting different parts of the town. When we did the survey for the master plan, that came through very loud and clear, is that people wanted sidewalks and wanted to be able to walk to the center of town and those types of things. So very prevalent.
One thing on that to think about as you guys move forward is, that is a private road that serves the 2 cabins past our property too. So there was a lot of talk about, well, close that road or put a gate there. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So it is an open road to the end through our property.
Are there any limitations for actually crossing the rail trail?
Not right now. There is a crossing there. It's not an official crossing. If we were to make it a park and put parking on the other side, we would need to go through the state and get approval to do that. I don't think it'd be right to just start using the crossing that's there and taking a few cars and making it, 20 to 30 a day during the summer.
So on the Google shot of the map that you showed us, the cabins that get access via that road are the ones that are off to the left? Must be. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was just confused. I didn't even realize that.
I can show you on here, and I can show you one other thing. There we go. To that. So yeah, the road comes like right through here. Oh,
Right above the corner of the yellow.
so I'll start up here. The road used to come right here,
Yeah,
where you see this, and then it accessed down into here. That is still there. If we worked with the neighbors to use that, that was the original road. The person that used this cabin worked with Barbara Jones, and they allowed this road to come in that goes straight across. And then right now it crosses, and then you would drive right across here, and there's parking right. Yeah, right over here.
oh, for those other cabins?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, cause it does not look like a road. When you get that far, it doesn't look like a road.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, really, except for when we got access over there and started going over there and look at it, for the most part, it's the people that stay there a couple weeks a year.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maintenance vehicles.
You're saying you can get a car over to those houses or cabins on the far left?
You can get to the bridge that crosses the creek. But you can, on the trees on the top of the picture, if you can still see the picture, right through those trees at the top by where Barbara Jones and the rail trail would be, you can drive right through there.
God, I
Steve
walked
Patton-
down there and I've never noticed cars.
Yeah.
Steve Patton mentioned issues he'd had crossing the rail trail with trucks in one of the town meetings.
Yeah, it really would be dependent on where you're at, and I don't know when that was.
Okay.
They do have fiber optic buried along there, so if you're using really heavy trucks full of gravel or something, you know, we'd have to be really careful. We'd have to work with them and make sure that it was buried deep enough to do that. If not, they'd have to be protected, but you wouldn't want to be going back and forth with heavy trucks.
Right, because he was pretty clear.
But that's another reason we'd want to talk to the state if we were gonna parking or something on that side and make sure that we got permissions and that it was reinforced proper.
And it's the fiber optic
It's the
part
fiber optic
that
line.
causes the issue and not the
Well, that's,
rail trail.
yeah, that's ran down there and the fiber optic lines ran right along the edge of the road.
Right.
I'm gonna speak to the enhancing the town recreation. And we've talked, it was brought up that people want to walk on sidewalks and want to walk in the village, which is fine if you live in the village. For those of us who live in the rural part of this community, it is necessary for us to come in by some kind of vehicle and park it somewhere. For us to get any use of any recreational facility in this community. So you can't assume that everyone is able to walk or ride a bicycle to everything and use it. And that, I want to be careful that that assumption is not made.
And I think that's a big point is, you know, they would, for the town of Enfield, we would truly need to drive people to Lakeside Park or the village to be able to park, to walk down if we wanted it walk in only.
Mhm.
I know there's the Ice House Road
Yeah.
parking lot up the way, but that's in the city of Lebanon and they've had almost some of the same private road issues we're talking about. Worked with them, it is a private road there, and if it starts getting overwhelmed, that could make some problems down there as well. So we would definitely want to work with the town of Lebanon and others if we were gonna do something like that.
Well,
Kevin.
it's not a bad a walk coming from Lakeside Park. I mean,
It's about a
it's
mile.
safer.
Yeah, it's lovely for those who can do so. That eliminates anyone who has mobility issues from using most of the lake. And it's a shorter walk from the Lebanon side on Isos.
Yeah.
It's a very nice level, the whole trail is level. It's very nice.
It's like a half mile, I think, from ice.
Yeah, it's a short walk and it's very nice.
Yeah.
But that doesn't open it up
Yeah.
to the entire community.
It still would limit people with mobility
Yeah.
issues.
I'll try again. So aside from this property, which we just talked about isn't formally designated as a park, is there any, in this, thinking of this part of the town of Enfield, kind of this corner of the town of Enfield, is there any designated public park?
Shakoma would be.
The nearest.
Closest.
Lakeside
Go
Park,
on Lakeside.
Like, yeah, Shakoma and Lakeside.
Hughes Park, that would be,
Fairly,
that's it.
yeah, fairly far away from where, you know, I'm just thinking of geographically of this corner of the town,
This would be the.
this would be
only-
there.
yeah.
You know, okay.
Does the town own any other lake frontage?
Not lake frontage at this time, no. And none that I know of that might be coming up, so.
And I can add, I know someone said trying to get parks where they're kind of self-sufficient, where they make their own money. All the state parks here in New Hampshire, for like a property like this to rent it out, it's about $200 for half a day. And so, I mean, if you start looking at that, this property here, I truly think where the A-frame is, would be a lovely spot for a wedding. Like honestly, because you have big trees during the summer, that side faces really no houses. So photography wise, if you're looking at weddings or other events, it's tree lined back. So, I mean,
It's a beautiful spot and,
Yeah.
and the trees are mature and beautiful, really
Yeah.
nice.
And it comes down to limiting parking.
Yep.
You know, if you're saying 15 to 18 cars.
But the new cool hip trend for weddings is to have these small weddings where you hike back in and you have your close, because people are still afraid of the giant super spreader events or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
So they're doing the remote small ones. I know my girlfriend's looking at one of those, so that's why I can attest to it. And she's looked at this and said, well, if it does become that, she goes, we could have something up here. And I'm like, you know, it's an option. So just to speak on that.
So we talked about that, or family picnics or those types of things. It's a spot, it's a possibility. The other parking possibility is a revenue thing. And I know there was some talk about, well, we don't really collect at Tacoma now like we should, but something like this, we would really easily be able to put in the new cell phone parking apps, those types of things. And we just have to patrol it every now and then.
Yeah, yeah. Added cost to patrol it, of course, you know. I'm not sure how much you'd really get, you know? May not even be worth it, and especially to your point earlier, if we were able to get grants, especially federal grants, forget it, you can't charge at all.
And it really depends what you're planning on doing down there.
Yeah.
You know, my proposal was 50,000. It's not much. And then you have summer maintenance and the cost of porta potty if you put one.
Well, I think one of the things that we would need to do as a committee is to try to budget that out. Really, what would be involved to do the minimum in terms of what you put here? And then what are the ongoing maintenance? And how significant, if at all, are those costs, so that we have a true figure as best as we can estimate of what it would cost to move forward with the property.
I can take that a little bit more
Yeah.
if you want. I'm sure the guys know approximately how much time they spend down there
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
We rent porta potties in other places in town. so
Yeah.
we can bring that cost out.
Kind of dovetails a little bit into the third bullet point of what our next steps are.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to speak. We do have a charge from the select board of reaching out and soliciting feedback from a defined set of stakeholders. We can be more expansive than that, but there are certain stakeholders that the select board has said, you need to reach out to this group of people. Again, we could be more expansive than that, reach out to others, in addition to that defined list. I think and we kind of do need to have under this bullet point, an open discussion of what our future process should be. It might make sense to solicit some tangible feedback from those and other stakeholders. There is a universe of options here for this property that runs a pretty broad gamut from very light touch to, more intensive improvements. What types of, and it could take the form of a questionnaire, or we could have people come and talk with us at these meetings. Do people envision a public park of sorts? Do they envision a car top canoe launch type of place, or a picnic area, or a gazebo and event, type of place? Do they envision it being just open space? Do they envision it being more of a formalized type beach or swimming area? There is a whole universe of potential options.
I think one of the things that what we did on the master plan is that we started out with talking to different groups first in person, so they could come to this meeting. And that really worked well because it was very informal and people, got to discuss ideas. And then I'm not sure we'd want to go to this extent, but then we followed it up with the town survey. And so you could do some of that, but I think certainly talking to the abutters, the rail trail folks, the recreation folks, of course, and a lot of different stakeholders in town. And I think you're right, you could really go crazy with the number of groups that you'd want to reach out to.
Yeah, the rail trail folks, I mean, you can do that. I have talked with them. I know David has talked with them too, and they've really taken a stance that this is a town issue.
Yeah.
We're gonna stay out of it and let
Oh,
the
really?
town decide what
They
they
are.
want to do. And then we will work with you to help you do what you want.
Oh, interesting.
If it's something they're really against, they may come out, and, we don't
Yep.
like this, but, we were having those talks, and when it started to get political, I said, yeah, we're not gonna help make this decision. That's- So,
I'm sort of a bit naive on this subject, but I didn't realize it was such a political thing. But what were some of the pros and cons of the various, you don't have to tell me which groups, but I'm just curious what people are thinking that you've heard from.
well, there was concern about too much traffic down the private road.
Yeah.
There was concerns like Nancy brought up about Route 4. And
Yeah.
it's not a very pleasant place to turn in and out of.
Right.
In our public meeting, there was talk about making it more of a walk-in park if we went that way.
Concerns about safety along the sand and the
Yeah,
drop
some
off.
people were concerned about safety along the drop off, which I think was in response to my Tacoma Beach was dangerous, but it does, it goes out quite a ways, 35 yards or so, like you said, but then it does drop off relatively quickly from there. So there is that issue if someone got out that far.
Yeah.
You brought up waves from the boats going by as an issue.
And then I think there was a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I heard was paving the private road and.
Yeah.
I heard bringing in truckloads of sand to cover that whole area to make it a beach, which was never a plan.
The state will not do that.
Well, yeah, they
The
won't
lake-
do it.
We don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
Yeah.
moving sand in is
Yeah,
No.
it's not good for the lake. So trying to think if I could think of any others. There was other stuff, we have so many projects and some big projects going on that, is this a cost we wanna look at right now?
Yeah.
And so I think that goes along with what is the cost? What are we gonna do there? And
do we need to clarify a town position on swimming areas? Because Tacoma has a designated swimming area with a raft.
I don't think this committee needs to.
Well, just as a town approach to things, if you're gonna have a lifeguard in one place and not in another, is that leaving us open, or it seems like there hasn't been a lifeguard?
Not really. Yeah, you can't find lifeguards right now. Even the aquatic center can't find lifeguards right
Right.
now.
So, I mean, it's just a matter of planning it in that way, or a way of thinking of it
Yeah,
like that.
as you guys decide what we want to recommend, we could put a little more work into the details of what we want to do, but I think the first step as you guys move forward and how you're gonna do this is looking at that high level of what we want to do. And I wrote it down. I was gonna look, and I can look before the end of the meeting, but I also did the work on if you were to sell it and someone was to build a house there, what that tax revenue would look like.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
important to understand
Yeah.
what it might do.
Value of that, yeah.
What are the state regulations that would inhibit maybe the building that close to the lake?
It's like any other one. They just have to work through the engineering and getting approvals, and
State survey.
whether they could or couldn't, I couldn't really tell you that. That's, people have done it. So it can be done, but what's the cost and how would it happen? I don't know.
Yeah, the big nut is 50 feet away from,
Yeah.
the shore. That's the big one. And then your septic, of course, has to be, quite a bit further than that.
There's definitely enough room that it would be
Yeah,
farther back than a lot of
Yeah.
the houses along the
There's
lake.
plenty of room to put a large house there if someone wanted to.
How about a hotel?
I hope not.
The septic would be tough.
So I was just looking at the minutes and on my phone here of the groups that we are specifically charged with seeking feedback from. Those are the abutters.
Yeah.
The Conservation Commission, the Recreation Director and Recreation Board, the Master Planning Task Force, and other groups the committee feels should be represented. And then, of course, beyond that is of course, the general broad public input, writ large. Do we want to start as a next step, getting, and however we decide the best way of doing that is, whether meeting in person with people or inviting people to come and tell us what their ideas are from these different groups, or having it, you know, like I say, it could be a questionnaire targeted to these stakeholders to solicit their specific feedback. It could be, you know, an interview or a conversation with this committee, but it seems like an appropriate next step would be to start to reach out to these different stakeholders and discuss with them that universe of options.
Yeah.
That runs the gamut that we just talked about, and start to see where people's thought process is. And these
Absolutely.
different stakeholders, what they would encourage and why, I think. And then, you know, that's kind of, I think, an important part of the information gathering process is getting that feedback from those groups. Does that seem like an appropriate kind of next step?
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe
Moving into?
we look at, this list and whatever else people come up with, and maybe we invite them to, different dates of this meeting over time, in the next couple of months, maybe one per evening or whatever.
Yeah. So maybe one kind of homework assignment for us to think about in advance of the next meeting is, who should we reach out to? Not considering this list to be all encompassing, but there's that other groups that, you know, we may wish to meet with. Who do we want to meet with? What does that list of stakeholders that we want to conduct, I guess, targeted outreach to, in whatever form we end up conducting that? What is that list? And then once we're in agreement on that list, and then we can start to, I think, define whether there are a lot of different ways of getting specific input from different groups. We could have a focus group or a series of focus groups. We could send a questionnaire. We could bring people in and interview them at one of the meetings and kind of ask them questions. We could bring them in and have just an open, wide-ranging discussion. But I think at the end of the day, we want to get some tangible information from these different stakeholders about what their thoughts are and why. And so there does need to be some thought and some level of structure involved in it, so we know that we're getting useful information and making the best use of our time and theirs, because we do have kind of this 6-month clock that, that we need to work under, so. Does that sort of make sense?
Can we decide on some of these tonight?
We could. I don't know if we have a hard out at 6 or if,
No, we can go a little.
we can go a little longer. Okay.
I have a hard out at 6:30.
Okay. Because I do know that there are some public comments, some information from particularly one member of the public here tonight that he'd like to make sure the committee is aware of. So, but yes, I think we can start to flesh that out if you have ideas you'd like to share.
I think we can probably identify the abutters pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Are they here regularly, the butters? Or are they summer folk?
Oh, I think they're all full time.
I think most of them live here, but we
Okay.
can look and see, and if they're from away, we can figure out how we might want to do that, or we can invite them on Teams if they can do Teams. And so we can look into that a little. I'll put that down to have Rob, but we had decided with the select board that to determine what we're gonna use as a butter, we're just gonna use the zoning definition. So it would be anybody along Johnston Road Drive and anybody within 200 feet of that.
That's the safest, yeah.
Yeah.
What do we think the universe of abutters is? Are we talking about maybe 2 dozen or
Probably not that many.
not even that many?
Five,
I can let you know soon.
Sure.
We'll do it.
I mean,
probably 10.
Nancy, sorry, you were breaking up.
Oh, I said, I bet it's about 10
About 10, yeah.
if you go out a couple hundred yards.
So then what's the best way of engaging them? If, let's say you have a dozen, just make up a number that fit that criteria of what an abutter is. We could invite them to a specific meeting of this group that we structure more as a focus group and really kind of hear it and make a point of hearing from each of the abutters, the specific information about what their thoughts are. Or we could, we could structure it in any way, but I think that if, when we were talking with a group that small, we have, some different ways that we could engage them. That are, one of the things that I've done in the past that's worked pretty well, and we could probably make something like this happen if we needed to, was the clickers. You ever see a meeting with the clickers?
No.
You ask somebody a question and basically it's a poll and they have a clicker at their chair and they can kind of answer it in real time.
Yeah.
And that way you make sure you're hearing from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, it removes I'm gonna call it groupthink or the peer pressure of, I don't disagree with this, but my neighbor's being really loud and disagreeing and I don't wanna cause neighbor problems, so.
Yeah.
So you may need to think about that too.
Yeah.
Do you do this as a big group or do we break into small groups and go visit them individually, or how do we wanna do that? We couldn't do it as a quorum individual unless you wanted to invite them in one at a time, but.
Yeah.
If you were to break into smaller than a quorum, then that could be a little bit more of a private conversation with, that wouldn't have to be public meeting minutes about the meeting you had with them, those types of things as well. So think about that as you're thinking about how you want to do this. And
Part of that may be driven by how many abutters there are. 'Cause there's a big difference, I think, between having 2 dozen and 1 dozen, in the ability to effectively do some of these different things. Yeah. Okay, so abutters, yeah.
Right, Muscatine Lakeside Association. They be contacted.
I mean, I can relate this to them. We're not meeting until April probably, so.
Yeah, that'll probably be too late, but
Right.
certainly if we wanted to invite them to a meeting, I'm sure that people show up.
So obviously we have the Conservation Commission.
Yes.
The recreation board.
Yeah.
Fortunate to have the recreation director with us.
Yeah, he's actually part of the committee, so you said both, but we could bring the board in one day, or you guys could attend one of their meetings, or however you wanted to do it.
Is the master plan task force going to continue to exist?
Yeah, so the first 5 chapters have been completed and approved. And, we're in the process of trying to get some funding for the next 5 chapters.
Okay.
Funding was recommended by the CIP committee
Okay,
to go.
so
into the
it'll
budget.
probably start to happen relatively soon, and one of the chapters is recreation, that we'll be writing. So, yeah, I'm sure, members of the master planning task force would love to come talk to us.
Sure. It was the budget committee, not CIP. They put it in the budget.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Not mentioned, but the planning board, would the planning board potentially have any interest in sharing their thoughts about this?
What do you
Or
think, Kurt?
the select board purposely did not,
Okay,
thinking that if something had to come before them in the
yep,
future, then they wouldn't be swayed one way or the other.
Oh, that's probably smart.
And same with zoning, so.
Yeah, probably smart. But you get a lot of that, type of feedback, I think, from the, master planning task force. There's a lot of smart people on it.
so we've got a Butters, the Mascoma Lake Association, the Conservation Commission, the Recreation Board, the Master Plan Task Force, and then obviously the public.
The rail
General.
trail, forget the rail trail,
Rail Trail,
right?
So we can reach out, but I can get you the letter they wrote too.
And then, I'm not sure who we could talk to. Maybe it's Rob Taylor, but to get a sense of, if at the end of this, effort, we recommend that it's, sold, I'd be interested to hear from Rob or Ed, I'm not sure who we would talk to, of what could be put there for a building with the size and the tax revenue and all that sort of stuff, so that we can include all of that in our analysis, so that people can't say that we didn't look into it.
looking at the development, the realistic development potential. of
Realistic
that-
development,
that
the size of the
property.
building.
We have a perfect scenario.
What's-
So let me see if we could get about the same size home on there, but when I was working with Julie on the assessment, on the other side of the lake, there's about the same size lot.
Yep.
With a pretty big house on it, so we have a tax assessment from that, and that's what I use to say this would be probably fairly comparable.
Okay.
So if we can fit
Yeah, I think
that
that's close.
similar size house, we
Yeah.
can get you that information.
What's the zoning?
R1.
It's 1 acre, yeah.
We really, can the zoning board or whoever does this have any restrictions on height or anything else? Or is it just whatever they want to build?
No, there's tons of
It's
restrictions.
based on the zoning rules.
Yeah.
And if they want to do something different, then they have to get a variance.
Well,
So there's the typical setbacks, the additional setbacks are in the water, there's height restrictions. What else, Kurt?
Yeah, for the property line setbacks, since you asked them, the biggest impediments to a development is gonna be crossing the rail trail. And getting, there's access, but how much access will the state, what type of access will the state allow?
That's an assumption of
Yeah.
what they would or would not allow until you work with them. I mean,
the
unless
same
you're
thing with
making.
the access on Route 4, the state will control that.
No, because you're crossing the rail trail, it's a whole different animal.
Right, but it's
They're
also
restricting-
access, if you're gonna expand that
I
Johnson
was gonna
Road.
say, we could argue and debate that all day and not be right.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
I mean, there is access across the rail trail, the homes there now,
Yeah,
so what?
yeah, would it
What
go
would
up
be
or
allowed?
down, or, yeah.
If you put a private residence down there, I don't think the state could say much about it because there's already an access corridor across.
And it would probably be less, right? Is probably what you could argue, or a developer could
But
argue that
if
it
we were
would
to
be
put
less.
something bigger, then.
Yeah. Same with access on Route 4. There's current access.
But if someone was building, they would have to go through that process.
Yeah.
So what we could do if you wanted, if you guys have enough meeting time, is I can have Rob put some of this together and have him attend and talk about some of the things that people would maybe need to think about and what could and could not
Yeah,
happen there.
and then at the same time, across the lake in terms of tax revenue.
Yeah, we can kind of roll that into one portion of a meeting.
Sounds pretty good. So we've got Rob Taylor on one hand that can shed some light on the development potential of the property, and
You
you
wanna try
working
to
with him.
tackle that first?
That might
I
make
think
sense.
that
At least
might
that's
be
one
an
side of the equation
easy
that
grab.
it's
I mean,
easy
most
to,
of the
yeah,
work's
He can
done.
do that off the top of his head.
it's easy to
Well, and I did
quantify.
the assessing work already. I just have to find it and dig it back up and.
Yeah, when is our, next meeting, Nate? I forget.
It would be the fourth Thursday of this month at 5 PM.
Okay.
We talked about meeting on the second and fourth
That's right.
Thursdays at 5.
Yeah, so it's the
26th.
26th. So maybe we have, Ed do his thing and have Rob come on the 26th if Rob can make it. He seems like he lives here in the evenings, so I feel bad asking him to come to another meeting.
We all do.
Yeah, I know you do too. So does Kirk.
So that would give us a lot of insight on that side of the
Yep,
of the potential equation, which is, okay,
Yep.
what if we disposed of the property? What would that look like in terms of development potential? What would that look like in terms of potential both sale of the property revenue and recurring tax revenue? What does that look like?
yeah, maybe we, on the 26th, we do that piece for half the time, and then we pick one of these other groups to come talk to us for the second half of the meeting. So we-
I was gonna say, it might be a great time too, for you guys to think and come back with your list to put together of who you think
Okay,
should be called in.
Right.
Not-
And maybe get a little bit deeper about what we want to ask them
yeah,
and how we want to ask them.
Maybe
And then
that's-
maybe at the end of the meeting, we have that plan laid out. Nancy, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that that's the second half of our meeting on the 26th is.
Yeah.
Coming to those
Absolutely.
conclusions.
Yeah.
And what are the questions we want them to answer?
Right, exactly. What we want to ask them. Yep.
should be a short list of questions. And we should, as much as we can, we should try to make sure that we ask the same questions of every group.
Yep.
Right, in the same way.
Same
And
order.
yep, and it's open-ended, right? The goal is to get them to talk and tell them, and have them express what they think. And not shut them down.
Still, I think, asking them in some kind of open-ended way where we cover that universe of options or hear their thoughts about that universe of options one way or another. So we make sure that we've kind of covered every base we can realistically think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good plan. Does that sound okay to everyone?
Yes.
Great. Well, with that and recognizing the time, does anybody object if I move to the public comment section of the agenda? And I'd like to recognize the member of the public that's here in the room today, Kurt Gotthard. And Kurt sent me a variety of documents. A plethora of documents, and I printed he sent these by email. They were too much to be able to email to everyone. But I printed them out for everyone and
Kurt
Can I
is
pick up-
the
Can
the
I
math
pick up a
guru.
copy of that at the town office tomorrow?
yes, there are extras. So yes, I will,
So do you need
I
it?
Ask
can
Ed
come
to
to the
keep the
DPW either. The puppy's going to daycare.
so Kurt, everything that you attached in your series of emails, I
Yeah.
have printed out.
Yeah,
And is in this packet. So if I could ask you to maybe just give the members of the committee a bit of an overview about the documents
Yeah.
that are in this packet and how they're germane to the committee's work.
Okay, well, basically, when this started being talked about as something being done, I decided to do some research on basically the boundaries of the property, the physical boundaries of the property, and what the deeds actually said. And I went to online for the Grafton County, and you can actually, if you do a cut and paste or a Word document, you can actually copy the deeds from their website without paying. Which is what I did. It's sort of a back way of doing it. And it turns out I was not able to actually find deed outside of the original deed from 18 something, whatever the date was, of this property. When it went from the private landowner being sold to the rail trail. That's the only deed to the town-owned portion of the property. But I did find a lot of the abutting deeds and the description of using Johnston Drive, and then speaking of the right-of-way across the rail trail to the town-owned property along the lake. And that's basically what I copied. And but also in those, some of those deeds, they made reference to the rail trail plats that were created when the rail trail was, not the rail trail, the actual railroad line was built. They sent out the surveyors and they surveyed the railroad line along with the properties, and I got copies of those, and those I wasn't able to send, don't, because the file was too big, but there's copies on that flash drive. And they sent this, I got it from the state archives, and they sent this file that was like several megabytes in size. But I was able to convert it to a PDF, and then went to normal copy, and they made photocopies of it for me. And I asked the guy to zoom in on and do a 2-scale copy of the Johnston Drive town property. So I actually made paper copies of that, so you can actually do scale drawings on that. So I have some extra copies here. I can pass this around. I don't know if this size paper is, there's something that can copy this size, or you
What is
have
that, 11 by 17?
it's a little bit bigger.
It's bigger.
Well,
than
actually, the copy, that
They can do
section,
that.
actually, that section may be, he has it on, either you can do it off the file or a paper copy. And that's probably the most accurate survey of the property that you're going to get at the moment, short of paying a surveyor to go down there and finds the actual corners. And the town has in their file a survey that was done in 1950-ish.
You know which one that was on here for me to show it to people?
Yeah, actually, this one is not on that file, but the town has a reduced copy of the reduced size of this plat, which was done in 1951 by Mr. Bernard Currier. He's the one that actually built the property, I don't know what you want to call, illegally had houses built on that side of the rail trail, because he never actually owned the property. The rail trail owned the property, but he thought he owned it, so he said, "Here, build some houses there, subdivide it and show people to build houses." And that's in one of the court documents, and there traces that sort of history of that. Now, the town's copy is like on an 11 by 7, or actually an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So I made a bunch of enlargements and tried to get this to scale. And it turns out that this is not even drawn to scale. It's supposed to be a 1 to 40 inch. Some of the lines measure 1 to 40, some of them don't.
Yeah.
So it's a poorly done plat for the most part. But the Grafton County deeds does have a copy of this, I believe, to actual size. So you don't have to do what I did, which is make a bunch of copies and tape them together. And it's, deeds. It's in one of the deed books. I have it written down at home. Actually, I think it was, yeah. Yeah, I have the copy at home, where it's filed in Grafton County. But, using this, I went out last fall and tried to locate some of the physical monuments that are on the property. Through the lake. Okay, so this will be, here's Mascoma Lake here, Route 4 is here. It shows reference to that right of way going across the rail trail. Here, and then the two different properties. There's supposed to be iron pins along the lake fronts for those lines that he drew. I wasn't able to find any of those. I did find several reference points. When you come down Johnston Drive and where it meets the rail trail, there is a granite post. It's referenced in one of the deeds, a granite post. I was able to physically find that. It's been tipped over, laying on the ground, but it's the obvious post, and it's in line with the right of way for the rail trail. So that is a really good starting point if you're down there and you want to get a visualization of where the property lines really are, and with the tape measure and compass. And then I did find 2 telephone poles that are referenced on the property just outside the rail trail. The stream where it crosses, there's that bridge and the stream goes under it. The Route 4 side of that stream, which is about 20 feet or so up, there's actually 2 pins side by side on the stream bed. They're not referenced on this plats, but they're there. I did find the pin that is further towards Lebanon, marking the boundary line, which I'm pretty sure is actually the actual town line, not what is referenced on as approximate town line that's shown on this.
Yeah.
Says approximates. It's just, I believe, based on what I found and the rail trail line, which map plat that shows the town line and the measurement from the bridge to the rail trail plats, town line, the distance lines up with the property line that is just, is here.
That's a good point. So this is pretty close to the Enfield Lebanon town line.
Oh, it's right, yep, yeah,
Does it border it?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
well,
The other
well,
side
well,
of
the
the
other
stream.
side, the other side of the stream does, yeah.
Yeah,
I had
Yeah.
a surveyed map that the lady had that has the second cabin that's in the Lebanon side of that.
yeah.
Mhm.
And she pulled out the surveyed map that she had done that showed the town line shooting between the 2 cabins.
Huh.
Mhm.
Showed us where she approximately thought that was. We didn't find actual pins and we didn't really look that hard.
Yeah.
But I was down there with the Lebanon assistant city managers,
And tax
Talking
wise,
about-
she pays taxes to Lebanon.
Lebanon.
So is Lebanon an abutter that we should?
They're in a butter I've talked to. I haven't actually got the letter, but I talked to him about my proposal before I gave it to the select board to see what it would do. And I've gotten verbal from them that they would be not opposed to us doing that, but. So I have made that connection and I can give you guys something if we decide to head in that
Okay.
direction. But
Yeah, I mean, I flagged with orange flagging the places where I did find corner pins. Did the traditional 3 flags on the tree that's close by, flag the actual pin. It's something I do as a hobby when I go out preambulating. You know, in the middle of the woods and you're looking for your corners, it's like, oh, someone found it for me. But, so until it gets too deep with snow, you can actually get down there and still see them.
Yeah.
And get a sense. And that's basically between the plots that I found and just a copy of the deeds that describe it. There is one letter in there that was one of the abutters, I believe it's the one on the Lebanon side, where they wanted to cross the rail trail for the partial piece of property that they owned on the lakeside of the rail trail. And the DOT, the state of New Hampshire and some other, probably the DOT, said you can cross with a lawnmower to mow your lawn, and that's it. So that's why I was like, the access is like, questionable what's they would actually permit for crossing. So there is on the wheel trail plat, they do show previous crossing to that property, but then when they acquired it from the property owner in 1886, whatever it is. So there was a crossing then that became legal, but that was to the whole parcel.
Yeah. Well, and that's the right of way across the back of ours for them to get to their property.
Yeah. So, that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you for all that homework, Kurt.
Yeah, it was, it just is a hobby.
You
It's
still-
a hobby, it's a hobby.
I think it's your hobby.
Yeah, it is. So like, oh, let me do some research. We're like a research fellow. But,
Well, thank you.
yeah,
Did you have any other comments you wish to share with the committee tonight, Kurt?
I can wait. I mean, my opinions, when you're asking the public about what they think they should be done there and stuff like that. So I have ideas, what I would like to see, but
Is Mr. Beaufay or any other members of the public still on Teams?
I believe they all.
I am.
Do you wish to make any public comments, Mr.
Ju-
Beaufay?
Just a couple of them. I think the rail trail, reiterating what Ed said, is Friends of the Northern Rail Trail who maintain the rail trail part of it in the summer time and open times. Reiterate what Ed said, that being a statewide organization, they're not going to get involved in local issues, but would be happy to work with you. Secondly, interesting and amazing research as always, Kurt, about that the original structures and property to the north of the rail line may have at least originally been not legal deeds. What is the status of that now? Who owns the road? Who has right of ways? And what limitations are there on that? I think those are questions that definitely need to be answered as you go forward. And that's pretty much it. I look forward to continuing to see how this goes.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public online that wish to make a comment this evening? Hearing none, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn. If there is no other business. All right, we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Non-debatable motion, right? So all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
A roll call, I'm sorry. Roll call. We will go around the table. On the motion to adjourn, Mr. Marker,
Yes.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Lynch,
Yes.
Ms. Eckert,
Yes.
Mr. Rich.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. Ms. Kennedy,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
sounds unanimous.
Awesome.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. We will see you in 2 weeks.
Perfect.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
We'll have to take a field trip and I'll go out there and look at the property some sunny spring day.
I am looking forward to it. Looking forward to being able to
Here, you can actually take.
jog on the rail trail again. That's
I was
getting
there
good
yes-
exercise.
I was there yesterday and it could not have been more beautiful.